welcome to another episode of the Boston Greeks podcast. I am Ari, and I am here with my co-host, Foti Stamos. How are you, Foti?
I'm very well, and yourself, Ari?
I'm doing pretty good. Traveling today, a little tired, but super excited for what we have in store tonight. Foti, why don't you, in your vast knowledge, tell us what's going on?
Well, speaking of travels, Ari, we always have great journeys on these episodes because we bring so many interesting, and we always say this, interesting guests to the podcast. We always try to highlight uh, Greeks, Greek Americans, Phil Hellenes that are in our local area that are doing amazing things. And this guest that's coming on to the show definitely is interesting. Not just interesting, but what he's doing is super cool, super fun, and something that we should definitely consider doing. Let's bring on to the show, and a friend of ours is too, because we've known him for many, many years, right? Chris Damianakos of Cashunt. Chris, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, you guys.
So, Chris, let's before we get into like the juicy stuff, which is what you do. Um, just give us a little brief history, like where you're from, where you grew up, just, a little bit what church you went to, anything Greeks like to know.
Yeah, sure. So born and raised in Peabody boy, straightforward. First generation Greek. Parents both obviously from Greece, but as far as roots in Kalamata,
Oh,
only child, pretty much wild imagination, as a lot of only children tend to have. And, that's pretty much it. Tend to go to Greece as much as I can each and every year. Try to kind of, my wife and I have one son. So we try to subject him to Greece culture and Greek culture. And thankfully, he enjoys it. So we tend to, instill that in him. So
yeah,
that's pretty much it.
that's very important.
Yeah,
It's something that we all as Greeks should be doing.
sure.
Um, so, Chris, let's kind of fast forward.
Mhm.
First, just give us a brief description of Cash Hunt, and then let's go back to where you started, how you started, what inspired you, and all that stuff. So, what exactly is Cash Hunt?
So what Cashunt is, it's a 2 hour interactive scavenger hunt. Kind of has elements of a traditional scavenger hunt and an amazing race. It's conducted in the city. The city itself is the game board. It's usually about a mile radius. We have it in, as far as in Boston's concerned, in a few locations. So historic Boston, Back Bay, and Harvard Square, and then in other locations outside of the city. What we do is we work with many different clientele. So it could be corporate, it could be schools, it could be organizations, it could be social games. And when I say social games, family, wedding parties. So it's a whole big gamut of things. And what we do, the games are private. You're not going against members of the public. And there you get all physical materials, premium materials, customized sometimes towards the clientele. And they're doing this wild and zany game where they are competing against each other, because we take the group and split them into teams, and they're doing photo challenges, video challenges, things that are physically hidden around the area that teams need to go and find. And the interesting thing, which we'll talk about as far as the infancy of it, but the game has evolved through the past. We're celebrating 25 years this year. Is it,
Wow.
started off with Polaroid cameras, then it moved over to digital cameras, then it moved over to Apple iTouches, and now we have an app, which now with the app, we're literally playing Oz behind the curtain,
Hmm.
because I can see everything that's coming in. And while they're playing, I'm like, all right, guys, you having a great time? Great. Here's 10 new challenges. So you're constantly competing against each other. Like I said, in general, when it comes to adults, they always like, yeah, what are we doing? What is this thing? And everyone's got a kid side and inside of them. So it's just pretty much, they compete against each other, have fun. We give out medals, and all the photographs and videos that they take, we send them back to the client pro bono. You're not buying photographs and videos, so they actually have a nice little, scrapbook of the locations, like certain locations we try to expose in the city, and of their time. So that's pretty much the nuts and bolts.
And Chris, you said it's a 2 hour interactive con
Mhm.
is I'm assuming it's a 2 hour on foot, right?
On foot, yeah. So
Well,
we try to when we first started doing this game, and you're gonna laugh because you're gonna know there's a mutual guy that inspired the idea.
oh,
But it used to be in um, different cities. So jump into a car, traditional, run around. But the thing is, obviously, as a business, that's a massive liability. So the scenario of it is keep it on foot and make it about a mile radius. Doesn't mean that they venture off that far, but it's more contained and a lot less of a liability in itself. So yeah.
it's not like Cannonball
Yeah.
Run.
Yeah.
I mean,
I've
this seems, I mean, just hearing about it sounds like so much fun, but I could also kind of envision so many benefits for the different types of groups. Like a corporate would be like team building, right? They
Yeah.
have to like work together. They are gonna laugh. They're gonna like, see what the person's made up of with their analytical skills and trying to figure stuff out. Then,
Yeah.
and so on and so forth. Is that something that you kind of knew was gonna happen, or did that just grow organically with your idea?
It grew organically. I'll be honest with you. It was something that I'm gonna be honest with you. I didn't really quite believe in. You know what I mean? It was just kind of give you an idea how this came to play. No pun intended on that. It's just basically as a kid, I was always putting games together. You know what I mean? Got inspired by games itself. When I was a little kid, I had my little, I don't know if I'm dating myself, like a Commodore 64. And then I used to make with a friend of mine, Glenn Redmond. We used to make 8-bit games.
Oh, wow.
So we would take graphs and create the characters and totally nerd out. And I was totally infatuated by Choose Your Adventure books. I don't know if you guys remember
Yeah.
what those were,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So I loved that idea. So at that time, we were learning a very basic version, which was DOS in regards to computer language. And we would write out the story and all that type of stuff. So that really inspired that. Then later on, what happened was I went to, as I would go to Greece and visit family, my cousin said, we're in Kalamata. He goes, we're going to go on a weekend exochi to Finikuda. I'm like, all right. I was 15 years old, I think, at the time. And we stayed there for the weekend. An Italian tour group came by. They stayed there and they were going to have this big game. So it was myself, my cousin, and his friend. And ultimately, what they did was the first day was a scavenger hunt. I never knew what a scavenger hunt was, but it was legit scavenger hunt. Pina mo paes mia gravata from a Horiati. Go get this, go get that. And I'm like, we're going to find, mind you, in July, someone with a gravata, right? So we're knocking on people's doors. I'm like, this is awesome. You know what I mean? Like legit scavenger hunt. And then after the next day, there was an obstacle course along it was like exohin, you know what I mean? So they would like, I remember our hotel rooms were little huts, you know what I mean? So they would have that. Loved the idea. Came back home the following year here in Peabody. There were two notorious scavenger hunts in the 80s and in the 90s. Now, one was called the Great Pumpkin Hunt. I mean, it was it was done by another person from a graduating class that graduated way before me. Who could get the most pumpkins in 6 hours? So a lot of houses were raided and pumpkins were. So one of the local parks, I mean, there was a lot of arrests that night, I guess. It was in the Peabody News. And there was, pumpkins galore. There was another one that was a humongous scavenger hunt that did on Route 114. I know, Foti, you're familiar with Peabody. Ari, are you
Yes.
familiar with Peabody?
Slightly, not very.
He knows the
So-
Starbucks on 114.
Okay,
All
you're
right.
it. So right across, actually, right across from the Starbucks was a Chrysler dealership, and they used to have this humongous pink elephant. And the senior class that year had a big scavenger hunt a couple days from their graduation. Well, lo and behold, on graduation day, the pink elephant was on the football field. So, I love this stuff. Now, mind you, I wasn't doing that type of stuff. So I love that whole idea. And I'm like, oh, wow. And I saw this movie called Scavenger Hunt, got inspired. Then I did a big scavenger hunt, as a teenager. It went really well. Then that spawned off because I love the idea is like if I can pit Ari against Forti, let me see what the results are going to be. I always loved seeing that. You know what I mean? I loved seeing breaking up tournaments just to see, as a spectator, what you would do. So I
Well,
did.
it wouldn't be much of a challenge. I would destroy him.
There you go.
Well, yeah, let's put some money on that.
So, different types of tournaments, racquetball tournaments, billiards leagues, all that type of stuff. And then years later, and this is what I'm going to say, the mutual friend. My wife was in Greece for a wedding, and I was here, and I was watching, this is like in 99 or 2000, and I was watching the first season of Survivor. And I'm like, wow, this is a really cool game. I'm like, heck, I'm going to do a scavenger hunt again. So I call, my wife calls me up. So how things will go, listen, when you come back, I'm going to do a big scavenger hunt for friends and family. And she goes, what? I go, trust me. So it was years later, I do the scavenger hunt, and the mutual friend is Peter Solaris. You guys obviously know Peter.
Peter.
Of course.
So I go, Solaris, I go, we're going to do a scavenger. He goes, I'm in. I go, all right. So we got all these people. Everyone will put some money in. I wasn't making any money out of this whole thing. It was just whoever wins gets the pot. So we just started, I would start, this is just my marketing mind. I would just go to everybody's house and their mailbox put, where's Clucky the chicken? It was like, it looked like a newspaper article. It's like, what the hell are you talking about? Chris, what's that? I go, I don't know. I go, some sort of chicken that's missing, whatever. So anyway, it was one part of the game. It was just like a stuffed chicken that I had hidden. But mind you, they had to do other challenges, photos and videos, all in cars from Peabody to Boston and everywhere in between. It was a 6-hour thing. So I remember Solera, I go, all right, everyone's going to come over for a coffee and breakfast, and we're going to break the teams, and off you guys go running. I'll never forget Solaris. Solaris comes with a humongous chicken cage. I'm like, hey, what are you doing with that? He goes, you said we're going to get a chicken. I go, my neighbor has a chicken. I'm going to bring him. I'm like, no, you didn't. So anyway, they all play it. They have fun. Solaris wins it, actually.
Of course.
And Solaris says to me, you ever think of this as a side gig? And ultimately I said, it will never work. He goes, you ever try it? I go, it'll never work. And then he goes, trust me, give it a shot. So long story short, the following year, I put an ad in the Boston Herald. And then about 2 or 3 weeks, a phone call comes in. I'll never forget it. And there's a little Easter egg in my games. His name is Luigi the Chico. He was the first guy. He calls me up. He goes, yeah, how you doing? I saw this ad that you got. What is this? Cashunt. Is it you win money out of this? I go, no. Now, mind you, I didn't believe in the product. How the hell am I going to explain this product? He goes, listen. He goes, me and my Uncle Sal, I'm going to do a bachelor party. And I want to have you do the scavenger hunt for me. I'm like, oh, I go to my wife. I go, I don't know. I go, these guys come like right out of the movie, right? So long story short, we planned it out. It was, again, a multi-city type of thing. And I had to meet him at the end of I think it was in Everett or in Malden in an Italian-American club. It was literally knock on the door. Who are you? It was a blast. I got hooked, but the game wasn't where we are at now. I mean, I was doing some odd jobs, bartending, substitute teaching, all that type of stuff. And we would do it every Saturday at 6 o'clock. And my wife would say, did you ever think about doing it during the day? I go, it'll never work. Did you try it? No. I did, I advertised, it worked. Do you ever think about doing it during the week? It'll never work. Did you try it? No. Do it. And that's where the corporate came in. Again, organically, the wedding parties came in, but we weren't doing, like, we do close to 200 plus games a year. I think I was probably breaking the first couple of years. Like I always, 25 years, I always say, ask me about my first 10 years. They weren't glamorous. So the thing is that we would do maybe 10 games a year, then maybe 15 the following. And then what just brought it where it was this family did it out of Washington. They had a great time. And this is 10 years later. Everyone in their right mind would have dumped this idea probably in about a year. And the phone started ringing a lot more. And they go, we saw the review. I go, what review? Oh, it's this, this website. And I go, what's the website? And it was TripAdvisor.
Hmm.
And that was the beginning of TripAdvisor. And ever since then, then it just like became a little bit more stronger. So it's, that's why I say anybody that in general, forget about Cashunt. It's like if someone tells me they got a crazy idea, I'm like, yeah. I go, look at what I do for a living. I go, there's no such thing as a crazy idea. And kids, especially now, I was just having this conversation this morning. There's so many tools that back in the day, we didn't have those tools. I mean, the only thing that we had was the internet, and the only time you had to advertise, you can only advertise in a magazine, which would cost you through the nose, or a newspaper.
Or
Now with AI
GreekBoston.com
tools, huh?
or
Oh,
GreekBoston.com.
Greek Boston. But now with AI tools and, again, like the cover of my game book, it looks like a comic book, but that is now AI generated, which I couldn't develop that type of artwork. I would have to probably hire somebody with hundreds, if not a couple of thousand, to develop something on a one shot, right? If you like it or not, this is what you're getting. But now it's like, so I tell kids, even my son, I'm saying like we're in the process of college, right now. I'm like, you have to go into that, there's so many tools. So that's how we landed where we are now. So we're grateful, humbled.
That's amazing. What an amazing journey you just spoke of.
Well,
Yeah.
somebody like you deserves success because you saw it with the difficult beginnings. You saw it with like your own criticisms. You saw it with not making much in the beginning, and you stuck through.
Right.
I'm a super believer in sticking with things because 99% of the time, if you stick with something and you really believe in it and you really enjoy it, it'll
Yeah.
become successful. So you stuck through it, and now you
I
deserve
think
any and all success you have.
I appreciate that. It's the thing is that when you're excited about what you're doing, it doesn't matter if you're doing it for a living or as a hobby. I always say my philosophy is start it off as a hobby. And if the hobby overlaps and it becomes your job, that's gravy. You know what I mean? But in essence, though, if you get up in the morning, I don't know who said this, but he had said, I'll tell you two things that someone told me. If you wake up every morning and everything feels like a Friday, then you know that you're enjoying what you're doing. You know what I mean? If you're enjoying what you're doing, you're not necessarily working, if that makes any sense.
Oh, yeah.
And the one thing that someone told me that I'll never forget, ever, ever forget, there is a saying goes, it's the rule of 500. He goes, you treat a customer bad, it's going to get to 500 sets of ears. Now, this is pre-social, very, very quickly. If you treat someone really well, it's going to get to 500 sets of ears, but very slowly. It might take months, even years. So that's the one thing I'm really proud of in regards to our customers and our clientele, because we have a lot of repeats, is that we treat them well. So if they said, look at, I promised you 10 people, but 8 people showed, or whatever, 20 people and 17, okay, no worries. I'm not going to charge you for them. Chris, it's pouring outside. Now, mind you, like this right now is a little bit off season, but like this past weekend, I did a game in the freezing cold. But I tell them, like, guys, I sound like the customer, not them. Yeah, it's kind of cold out. You sure you want to go be out there? They go, yep, we want to come. Or, oh, Chris, it's really bad. No worries. Your deposit comes back. Because because I never want a customer to ever assume that, oh, wow, this guy, he made us play in the rain, or, he charged us for some, you can't do that. And, as far as Greeks are concerned, and this is where I have a debate, is that I'll tell you something that bothered me. I just had this conversation not too long ago. There was my old primary care doctor about a few years ago. I sat down and we were talking. There's racism in the world, but it's not only black and white; it's also nationalities, as well. And I remember this because it was on 2 different occasions, on 2 different years of a checkup. And he had said, he goes, "So oh, you're Greek, so you must have a pizza shop or you must paint." I'm like, I go, neither do I do that? I go, yes, there are Greeks that own restaurants and there are painters. And I go, why would you say that? And he goes, well, he goes, that's, anywhere you go, it's owned by a Greek. I go, no, that's not the case. Vado per after, right? I'm not going to get it bugged the heck out of me. I'm not going to lie to you. The following year, the same idea, same thing. I go, is that what we're known for? I go, is that literally what we're known for? I go, if you don't mind me asking you, doctor, I go, what's your nationality? And he goes, well, I'm Italian. I go, sorry, do you have a pizza shop or this or that, or do you make ceramics? Or he goes, no, I'm a doctor. I go, don't insult me because, what I mean? That's insulting to me. So the key thing is, which I love, like if you watch a movie and you watch the credits, look how many Greeks are in the credits,
Yes, yes,
right?
because we definitely pay attention, or we have been paying attention to the credits, looking for a Greek name.
Yep. The Greeks are out there in high places, in big jobs, leaders of companies or whatever. That stereotype type drives me nuts. And I will tell you this. Sometimes Greeks will be like, "Tikanis, τι δουλειά είναι αυτό? Τι δουλειά είναι αυτή, ρε?"
We
This
feel
is the
your
beginning.
pain because we
This,
feel your pain because
yeah,
we get that engagement
you
all
get
the
it?
time.
This was
Yeah.
the beginning. Τι δουλειά έκανε? Τι παιχνίδι? Τι κάνουν? Και πληρώνεσαι? Άκουσες τι κάνει ο Δαμιανάκος. Κάνει ένα παιχνίδι και τρέχουνε για πόντους. Then the business does well. Σου είπα, ρε. Καλύτερη ιδέα είχες. Τι καλύτερη ιδέα. I'm like, right. But I don't
Classic,
forget that. I
classic.
don't forget that. And I'm like, I respect that. But you got to look at, we're all, and that's what I'm saying. It's just a scenario that, as far as Greeks are concerned, and every other nationality, that we're knowledgeable, we're spreading our wings, you know what I mean? We're making our names known in regards to our nationality. So it's all good. But yeah, I trust me, I had my share of criticism for
I'm
sure.
sure. But
Yeah.
Chris, you are definitely an example of as a passionate Greek American, because we bring plenty of Greek Americans from different backgrounds and industries, that whatever we choose to do, we do it with like drive and passion,
Yeah,
and we
no, I respect
exceed
that.
at what we choose to do. That's one thing about Greek Americans that I would love to highlight, is that no matter what industry we decide to take on, we always excel at it.
Absolutely. And it's this thing that I get really, it sounds kind of funny because like I'll watch, like I was saying, like the analogy of a movie or a TV show, if the credits are at the beginning and the cinematographer, I go, wow, there's a Greek, you know what I mean? It's kind of like a scavenger hunt in itself, right? So, oh my God, look at that. But it gives you so much pride. I'll tell you one thing. I was in Chicago. There's a friend of ours that, have you guys been to Chicago before?
Yes.
Yeah. So so we have mutual friends that live in Chicago. And when I was there the very first time many years ago, I remember being in Greektown and I sat at a cafeteria with my wife. And the table next to me was like, they looked over and it just said, Yasas, how you doing? I'm like, what the heck is going on? Because now I'm thinking in a Northeast type of mentality. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh, nice to meet you, whatever. I go to my friend Tom, I go, what was that? He goes, my friend, he goes, this is the Midwest. He goes, us Greeks here are very united. I'm like, really? So we would go somewhere else again, but nothing like, there's nothing that anyone wants from anyone. Hey, how's it going? What's your name? Oh, wow. My name's Yanni, or my name is Vasily, or whatever. I was like, wow. I go, that is really cool. And that's why, as far as Boston is concerned, like you see it in New York, you see it in Chicago or Toronto, whatever. There's a Greek town, you know what I mean? Where we don't have it here. And I was just having this, I know, Foti, I know you have kids, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Two little
Ari,
girls.
you have kids?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was just saying this just recently, and I sound like a parrot but when we were growing up, you had Greek dances, you had Greek picnics, how it was, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, the
Annual
big nights,
dances.
right?
Yep.
And where Greeks would meet Greeks, you know what I mean? And form relationships, form friendships or whatever. That seems like it's kind of slowly, diminishing, unfortunately. So, it is what it is.
We got to keep
Why don't you start doing also get Greeks together cash hunts?
Ari, I'm gonna be honest with you. I tried, and
Greeks are tough customers,
yeah,
man.
I tried, but the thing is, what I tried to, but it wasn't in regards to a business, like a business transaction. It was more like, let me provide you the product, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, with nothing. I don't want anything in return. If it's for a charitable cause, I want to know what the charity is, so I know that it goes to the charity. And believe it or not, and so there's nothing like, let me just do my thing. Let me put the game together. You deal with whatever you guys have to deal with, and we'll call it a day.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Well,
I'm like, all right, I mean, it's there's some people that might say, well, I want this amount. There is no, I want this amount. I just want it to know that it's going to such a charity, whatever. But
Well, the Greeks here are pretty interesting because one other example, just like you mentioned, we used to work with Eligible Greeks, the dating site for Greek people.
yeah,
And we had great success with it here in Boston. But the CEO of that company called me one day and he's like, our speed dating has been so successful for Greeks all around the country. He's like, we want to do one in Boston. And I was like, nope, you don't want to do one in Boston. He's like, no, we do. I'm like, I'm telling you, Boston's a little tricky. I don't know
yeah.
if people will show up for speed dating. And he's like, we've had so much success in Chicago, in this, in that, and whatever. So I'm like, all right, if you believe in it, go for it. And he was like, the worst turnout they had for speed dating was Boston. Yeah, I
There's
don't know what it is, but
well,
it's funny because, like, I when I was going to clubs, I was mostly going to the clubs early 90s. I kind of stopped going to the clubs later in the 90s, But I'll give you a great example. I went to see Economopolo in Boston. I know he's coming back in May, in 2023. It was a Sunday night, classic Boston Sunday night. You're not really asking for too much. And he played to about, I want to say maybe three-quarters of the Roxy. Oh, I still call it the Roxy, whatever it's called now. And then I went to see him in whatever, it was like a $1.50 a ticket, which is, I understand that's the going rate. I went to see him in Kalamata at the Yipido for 20 euro. And I think he played to almost about 4,000, 5,000 people. And I said to my wife, I go, at the concert, and that was a legit stage show stadium concert, right? And I said to my wife, I go, doesn't Economopolo look happy at this concert? Because you just can't, you know, and that's the thing is, like, bringing I know they just brought Guillermo on Sunday. I don't know how that did, but the point of it is that, you know, really. So it's just a scenario that a Sunday doesn't, Boston can't
yeah.
compete against New York. Guillermo can do 2 nights, 4 nights, 3 nights, or, Economopolo or whatever in New York, easy. But bring him on to Boston on a Sunday, and then you have to be at work at 6 a.m. next, it ain't happening. So,
Times have definitely changed, Chris, and we speak about this with Ari all the time as time goes on, and how our circle changes, our generations are changing, what we're being subject to is changing. But I still believe that we can find a very creative ways to keep the flame going. And to
yeah.
Ari's point about doing something with Greeks, I still think that even as our parejas are trying to think about, even in our age group, because
yeah,
we're in our 50s and beyond, we'll date ourselves, but
yeah.
we're always looking for things to do, and like, how do we get together? I think what you're doing is an excellent opportunity to get together,
Yeah.
as friends, as groups. And having said that, I was going to ask you,
Mhm.
you do these services. Is there like a limited amount of people that can participate? Is there some sort of like type of criteria or requirements to actually um, get involved in a hunt?
So basically, we have our minimums. All our games are very family friendly, obviously. So our minimums could be as small as six to a group, or we can do a group, which you've done, like, 150, 200 people. I mean, so
Wow.
it doesn't really quite matter to us.
Okay.
The only thing is with us is that we always ask that the group, again, because the game is private. So we always ask that the teams are predetermined prior to arrival, and then we do our thing. They basically don't have to lift a finger. We just do the instructions at the beginning. We're monitoring the game as they're playing. So as they're playing, again, we can see all the submissions come in, and we can also communicate with them as they're playing. And then now we're back in the day, we had to go through cameras and go one at a time and tabulate. Now it's pretty much instant gratification. So we then do the presentation of how everybody did. So it doesn't really quite matter. I mean, as far as age ranges, we don't like to go under, the youngest would be 13 years old and then up. I always say, I usually get this question sometimes, and it's like, oh, we got a bunch of, 60-year-olds. I'm like, okay, that doesn't mean anything to me. A 60-year-old could be healthier than a 20-year-old these days. So it doesn't really quite matter. It's really, guys, it's a scenario to, Cashunt and other things that are like Cashunt is a scenario that it is social interaction, right? It is putting literally the phone, well, even though you're using an app, but you're putting the phone down and you are socializing, you are team building, you're laughing, you're just playing the game for 2 hours. And then in most cases, at the end of the event, because you're not seeing each other during the game, you might see each other in passing, but you are now conversing in regards to what you did. And, as far as a corporate environment, if we do like a conference that, people from all around come in for a conference and they don't know each other and from different languages and whatnot, it's an amazing icebreaker because no matter what, they have got to communicate and do these crazy things like, do a 10-second public aerobics class demonstration with members of the public, or, go find a member, put a rose in your mouth and do a tango with, and you're not doing anything derogatory. You're not doing anything offensive. You're doing anything comical. Like I remember, I'll never forget that there was a particular company that when I was doing the instructions, I was wearing sunglasses, so I'm constantly looking at him, and he was like literally like this. This is stupid. What are we doing? And the thing is, the psychology I was saying, I think earlier off air in regards to the points. So we have video challenges, whatever. The higher the point value, the more crazier the challenge. And that same guy came 2 hours later. He goes, "Don't bother. Do not bother counting anything. We won." This guy, there was one challenge. It's called Clucky, which means as a team, you got to find a member of the public and for 10 seconds, circle around them and cluck like chickens. Here it is, a CFO or whatever he was, or a CMO that was clucking like chickens. I got companies like these are our, again, I don't know what to blur, but these are like our medals. So we change them year after year. And it has a season, like this year will be the 25th anniversary. So we have people that have played the game before, and some of them come back like Michael Phelps. They'll bring their medals from previous and they'll wear them.
That's awesome.
I love that. I just love. And then we'll do like experiments. Like I saw this 60 Minutes episode several years ago, which it was people were paying whatever, some person in the medical field is therapeutic in regards just to laugh. It was like a laughing session. So I go, isn't that kind of funny? So I put it as a video challenge. I called it Laugh Therapy. Find a member of the public and for 10 seconds, loudly and proudly, just sit there and laugh at each other. So now the interesting thing was, here they are laughing. People that are passing by them are watching this take place. And for some bizarre reason, they're laughing at two people that, are doing that. Or if I have two games going on at the same time, which again, they're private, but I can do like Saturdays for the most part, you might have a game at 1 and then there's another game at 2. And I call it hunt or be hunted. If you're wearing a Cashunt badge and it's not from your initial group, hunt them down or have them hunt you down, take a group photograph and, for certain points. I've seen people that do not know each other from a hole in the wall, from two separate games, and just because they just saw they're wearing Cashunt tags, we got to take a photograph with them from an opposing game. And it's such a kumbaya moment. They're like, "Hey, how's it going? We got to take a picture with you. We got to take a picture with you too." And it's just kind of like, it's just sometimes experiments that become challenges. And you kind of like say, Let me see if they're actually going to do this. And they do it. And they're laughing about it and they're talking about it. It's escapism 101. I mean, there's no other way of doing
I
it. So
love it. I love it. You
I
know,
mean,
Chris,
this is so cool. Like, it's really cool. Chris, I obviously like I have so many questions, but there's only so much time. But can you give us your website, your social media handles, anything you want the audience to know so they could contact you or learn more about Cash Hunt?
sure, absolutely. So our website is cashunt.com, which is CASHUNT, just one H in Cash Hunt. Obviously, we're on Instagram, the Cash Hunt, Facebook, uh,
and,
TikTok,
and Chris, and
TikTok.
Chris,
So
even this is definitely the Boston Greeks podcast, local to the Boston area and beyond. But
yep.
is Cash Hunt also available outside of these
Yeah.
markets?
So we do have them out, so outside of Boston, we have, as far as New England, we have Portsmouth, Newport, and then we go down to Charleston, South Carolina, which is Charleston's a big month, like January is a big month for Charleston. Washington, D.C., New York. So those are different types of games in itself. Hence the app. Like here in New England, this is the only place that we will have a physical person in front of you. Those games are games that are prepackaged and sent to the client with a coordinator remotely on it. It used to be at one time we aligned ourselves with tour companies, specifically Chicago, Charleston, South Carolina, and Philadelphia, and they would host it. But at that time we had digital cameras. The moment the app came about, the app really came about, quite honestly, guys, during COVID. Because once COVID, first of all, we didn't even think we were going to, that was it. You know what I mean? But, obviously we couldn't hand out cameras and all that type of stuff because we had to sanitize them all the time. And then someone said, do you think about ever doing an app? And we thought about it. We worked with a third party and then we developed our own. So with that, we could actually expand a lot more, keep the costs small, and do it that way. So now, we do it with like we just did one in Austin, Texas, a couple months ago.
Did we do one together in Greece one time?
So here's a funny thing. So my sister-in-law a couple of years ago. So my sister-in-law originally from here. She moved to Iraklio. This is pre-COVID, and she goes, "We want to do it here, but now, mind you, with no app, cameras, and all that." So I go, but here's the key thing. I go, as you guys know, it's all about hustle. There is no stopping. Yeah, I mean, you have to go talk to the cafes, go talk to the hotels, this, that, and the other. And the scenario of it, they got a booking right off the bat. It was a team building group of Germans, and I wasn't expecting that quick, but it was quick. Yeah, I mean, within about a week, I was like, wow. It came out really nice because I could see it. But the key thing about it is once that's done, you got to hustle more. So it took the foot off the brake a little bit,
Okay,
So,
okay.
Yeah.
Wow, Chris, this is amazing. It's.
Oh, yeah.
I think Ari, we got to bring Chris back on again.
Well, I say next time he comes on, he's going to tell us some of the funniest stories, some of the craziest stories. We could go on and on. But I think there's a lot here to unpack, which definitely I think it's pretty interesting to talk about. But we do want to thank you, Chris, for taking the time out to be with us and to talk. And it's awesome. A Greek American is doing something really cool. Everybody out there, you should support. You should check it out. You should book a cash hunt of your own. I mean, it's so much fun. And it's something different, and we're all about supporting Greeks supporting Greeks. So get out there and do that. And once again, Chris, we want to thank you for being on. Foti, thank you. And everybody out there watching and listening, thank you guys.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
We appreciate you. Thank you. And we'll see you all next time.
Yes, sir.